Working the night shift at a gas station was always strange, but on that particular night, everything felt even more silent and empty. The clock read nearly 2 in the morning, and the last person had left over an hour ago. I was alone, with only the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional sound of the automatic door keeping me company. That's when I saw him for the first time. A man in a hat standing outside, at the far edge of the parking lot. At first, I thought he might be waiting for someone, but something about him made me uneasy. He was completely still, his face covered by the shadows of his hat. I watched for a moment, then looked away to grab my phone and check the security cameras. When I looked back at the parking lot, he was gone. I thought I was just being paranoid, so I went back to my work and tried to forget about it. Then I heard the door chime, signaling that someone had entered the store. I looked up at the counter, and there he was, the man in the hat. He stood right in front of the register, silent. He wore a long black coat, and his face was partially hidden by the hat, but I could see his eyes, deep like dark holes with no sign of life in them. "Can I help you with something?" I asked, trying to stay calm, but he didn't respond. He just kept staring at me, completely still. There was something profoundly wrong about his presence. The air around him felt heavy, cold, and an oppressive feeling began to suffocate me. My instincts screamed for me to get out of there, but I was frozen in place. That's when I realized time seemed to have slowed down. The hum of the refrigerator had vanished, and the store was plunged into absolute silence, as if the world itself had stopped. The only sound I could hear was my own breath, now uneven. The man tilted his head slightly to the side, still watching me, and a faint, twisted smile appeared on his face. But his eyes, they remained empty, black, as if pulling me into a deep, dark void. I began to step back, taking small steps, never taking my eyes off him. Each movement felt slow, as if I were moving through dense water. When I finally reached the office door, I glanced back to check if he was still there. But in the instant I looked away, the refrigerator's hum returned, and time seemed to snap back to normal. When I looked at the counter again, he had vanished. There was no sign of him anywhere in the store. Confused and panicked, I rushed to the security camera area and started reviewing the footage. What I saw made my blood run cold. In the recording, I was there, speaking and backing away just as I remembered, but the man, he never appeared in the footage. It was as if I had been reacting to something invisible, a ghost that only I could see. What still haunts me to this day is that when I checked the camera for the outside entrance, the figure of the man in the hat was there, standing outside exactly as I had seen him the first time. It was a cold, rainy dawn, one of those nights when silence and darkness seemed to swallow everything around. The gas station was deserted. Only the sound of rain hitting the metal roof and the occasional thunder broke the silence. My shift was almost over, and I was tired, counting down the minutes to leave, when an old car appeared out of nowhere, emerging from the dense fog that enveloped the road. The car was an old model, a classic from the 60s, the kind you rarely see anymore. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie, with its dark, rusty paint, yellowed headlights, and the low growl of the engine, like the sigh of a wounded animal. It slowly parked next to the fuel pump, but even as it stopped, I couldn't clearly see the driver. The rain ran down the windshield, and the interior seemed engulfed in an unsettling gloom. Suddenly, the window rolled down, and a pale, aged hand emerged, waving in a way that was almost mechanical, as if beckoning me. My stomach churned with a feeling of discomfort, but I went over, carrying the fuel hose to fill up the car. I approached the window and finally saw the driver, an elderly man with skin so pale it looked almost translucent. He stared at me with a vacant, expressionless look. His clothes were old-fashioned, a dark suit, as if he were dressed for a funeral. "Fill it up," he said in a low, raspy voice, almost a whisper. When I looked into his eyes, a chill ran down my spine. They were deep-set, like black holes, lifeless. I tried to stay calm and began filling up the car, but as I did, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The car had no license plate. The place where it should have been was empty, as if the car had never been registered. Something felt profoundly off. When I finished, I turned to tell him the amount, but the driver's seat was empty. The car was still there, intact, but the man had vanished. I looked around, searching for any sign of him. There was no way he could have left without me noticing. The only sounds were the rain and the distant thunder. In a mix of panic and confusion, I ran back to the counter and began reviewing the security cameras, trying to find an explanation. Watching the footage, my heart raced. There I was, walking up to the car, talking and filling it up as I remembered, but the car, it wasn't there. On the cameras, it looked as if I were pumping gas into thin air, like I was in a trance, serving an invisible customer. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to convince myself it was a camera glitch, some bizarre error, but something deep down told me that wasn't the case. I went back to the gas pump, and there was the car, parked exactly where I had left it. But as I looked closer, my blood ran cold. The doors were locked, but on the fogged-up glass window, handprints appeared, as if someone had pressed their hands against the glass from the inside. They were clear, disturbingly detailed, with long, thin fingers. And then, before I could react, the car's lights flickered on their own, and the engine started, emitting that low, sinister growl. The car began moving slowly, and I backed away, stumbling, my heart racing and terror overtaking me. It reversed, still making that low, disturbing sound, and disappeared into the fog as if it had never been there. I stood there, frozen in fear, staring at the emptiness where the car had been. The next morning, I was still in shock, trying to understand what had happened. That's when an older coworker at the station told me an old story about a car just like that one which, years ago, had suffered a fatal accident on the road in front of the station. According to him, the driver died at the wheel, and since then, on foggy nights, the car returns to the station, as if eternally trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead, seeking fuel for a journey that will never end. Since that night, I haven't been able to look at the fog the same way. And even now, whenever I see an old car passing on the road, I feel a wave of inexplicable fear, dreading that the man with the empty eyes is still watching me, waiting for his next chance to appear. It was one of those nights at the gas station when the silence felt heavy in the air, as if even the sound of the wind had been swallowed by the darkness. I was alone, in the last hour of my shift, waiting for time to pass as I looked out the glass window toward the empty road. No cars had passed in a while, and the only thing lighting up the night was the faint glow of the streetlights, casting long, distorted shadows across the asphalt. That's when I noticed something strange. There, on the edge of the road, almost imperceptible in the dim light, were figures moving. At first, I thought it might just be the light playing tricks on my eyes or my own mind acting up after hours of isolation. But those figures seemed solid. I stared, trying to understand what I was seeing, and what I saw made my stomach twist with fear. The shadows looked like people, human shapes that moved slowly, as if they were wandering, completely lost, dragging themselves toward the gas station. There was something deeply unsettling about the way they moved. Their bodies twisted as if they were disfigured. Their arms were too long, their legs bent at impossible angles, and their heads were always tilted, as if they had lost the strength to lift them. My heart started to beat faster, and I couldn't look away. One of the figures came closer, walking slowly along the shoulder of the road. I could see it had no face, just a smooth, dark surface, like a black hole. When it reached the first streetlight, it stopped and turned in my direction. It didn't have eyes, but I knew it was watching me. A chill so intense ran through me that my skin went cold, and fear held me in place, unable to move a muscle. Suddenly, all the shadows stopped at the same time, as if they had sensed my presence. One by one, they began to turn in my direction, their heads moving slowly in a synchronized, disturbing movement. There were no faces, just emptiness staring back at me. It was as if the darkness itself had come to life and was there to watch me, to feed on my fear. I felt a rising panic and decided it was time to lock myself in the office. I looked away for just a second to grab the key, and when I looked back at the road, the shadows were even closer. Some had already crossed onto the station grounds, their twisted silhouettes illuminated by the faint light of the street lamps. It was as if they were gliding across the ground, making no sound. Every step they took seemed to drag the darkness closer to me. I shut the office door with trembling hands and watched through the security cameras. In the black and white footage, the figures looked even more distorted, moving toward the convenience store, leaving a dark, shadowy trail behind them. Some stopped in front of the fuel pumps, while others began circling the store, as if they were surrounding me. The dread inside me grew, and I felt that something terrible was about to happen. Then I heard the first sound, a light scratching, like nails running across the glass door at the entrance. Then came another sound, a low, irregular breathing, as if someone were leaning against the outside, trying to get in. I closed my eyes, paralyzed with terror, and didn't dare move. But the sound grew louder, and soon I heard something even worse. A voice. It wasn't a human voice, but a distorted, cold murmur that seemed to echo in my ears, whispering words I couldn't understand. When I finally mustered the courage to look through the office window, I saw that one of the shadows was standing there, looking directly at me. It pressed itself against the glass, and I could see the long, deformed handprints on the surface, as if it were trying to break through. I felt my sanity slipping away, and all I wanted was to run, but my legs were glued to the floor, held by fear. Suddenly, the station lights flickered and went out, leaving only the darkness outside. Only the emergency lights inside were on, casting eerie shadows on the walls around me. The figures continued to move outside, and now I could see their twisted forms at the windows, pressing their empty faces against the glass, as if trying to get in. My whole body trembled, and my short breaths betrayed the panic consuming me. After a few endless minutes, the outside lights flickered back on, and suddenly all the shadows were gone. The road was empty again, and the station seemed to have returned to its usual silence, as if nothing had happened. But I knew those figures were still out there, lurking in the darkness, waiting for the next chance to come so close. Since that night, I've never been the same. Every time I look at the road, I feel that something is watching me, shadows moving at the edge of my vision. Even when I'm off the night shift, I still see those figures in my nightmares, twisted and faceless, always drawing closer, bit by bit.